Slam, 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 and then they just kept coming.
Motorists lined the Bayway after a series of pileups involving 130 cars.
More than 85 people were taken to area hospitals with injuries. Hi everyone, I'm Nancy Pierce.
And I'm Bob Grip. I'll have a live report from the accident site.
Action News 10 is coming up next.
You're watching WALA Channel 10, bringing you more news more often. Now, from the #1 news station on the Gulf Coast, this is Action News 10 live at 5 p.m.
We looked behind us and we saw that big rig, the green rig, coming right behind us. We're just so thankful my kids wasn't hurt. God.
An eyewitness tells what it was like to be caught in a nightmare. Pileups involving 130 cars on the Bayway. I'm Nancy Pierce in downtown Mobile.
And I'm Bob Grip reporting live from the causeway across Mobile Bay. Right behind me is where it all happened about 6:30 this morning. It's the interstate bridge that links Mobile and Baldwin counties, and within a few minutes it looked more like an automobile graveyard. 130 cars slammed into one another in a series of accidents that happened on both sides of the Bayway. It was terribly foggy at the time, which cut visibility drastically. It also cut reaction time as drivers couldn't avoid the cars and the trucks that were stopping suddenly ahead of them. The chain reaction stretched for 2 miles in the eastbound lanes and then 2 miles in the westbound lanes. Of course, it's a divided highway. The mess left one person dead, 6 others critically injured, and dozens of others bleeding and stunned. They just couldn't believe that their ride to work or school had ended like this. As you can imagine, it was also a mess for the rescue crews that were trying to help these people. The ambulances had to weave their way through the breakdown lanes to try to get to the injured. It was just a terrible scene here in the Bayway in Mobile County. And Amy Greer joins us now. She was one of the first reporters on the scene. How do you react to something like this? This looked like a wreck on the Autobahn in Germany or something.
Exactly.
It's so vast.
Everyone has had that same reaction, Bob. You know, how many times have we all traveled this Bayway and seen that thick fog? It can literally reduce visibility to nothing. How many times have we all said something like this was bound to happen?
And today it did.
Fog can be so dangerous. Even veteran law enforcement officers called it the worst disaster they had ever seen before. Even one saying, only by the grace of God did this accident not take more than one life. And into the fog this morning was definitely one of the factors that turned so deadly. The other factor, police say, hundreds of motorists trying so anxiously to get to work. By the time the fog finally cleared, the Interstate 10 Bayway was a disaster. Just a mile of twisted cars and trucks piled one upon the other in a rush hour traffic jam like no one had ever seen.
I have no idea how far back it is. I went all the way past exit 30.
Mobile police say the first fender bender happened on the eastbound stretch of Bayway about 6:35. A chaotic chain reaction would follow.
We stopped enough time, but the oncoming cars behind us, they didn't, see what was going on. And before you know it, we looked behind us and we saw that big rig, the green rig, coming right behind us. We're just so thankful my kids wasn't hurt. God.
As car after car slammed into another, some tried in vain to flag down others to warn them what lay ahead.
When we first hit, we got out of the truck and vacated the area, and then started running back down both sides of the road trying to flag traffic down, but there's so much fog people couldn't hardly see us.
Police say the wreckage continued, this time on the westbound lane, as motorists slowed down to watch what was happening. Before it was over, troopers say at least 130 cars would be involved in 5 separate accidents. One of the worst collisions, a Mobile fire truck and an 18-wheeler, with yet another car sandwiched in between. One driver after another described the horror of having nowhere to go but the rear of the car in front of them, or even worse, over the side of the Bayway.
I thought I was going to have to jump off the bridge at one time when that big truck was coming through. I thought I was going to have to jump just to keep from getting hit because he was pushing 3 and 4 cars towards us. Yeah, it was scary. It scared, really scary.
WALA photographer Rick Portier was on the Bayway shooting the thick morning fog moments before anyone realized how deadly a factor the weather was about to become.
A lot of them were saying it just came out of nowhere. They couldn't see, they were just traveling, and just boom, one car after another out of nowhere running into each other. Just a lot of surprise. It was unbelievable, the silence up there. When you got into certain spots, you couldn't hear the sirens and the silence. People just standing there in disbelief. It was horrible.
Rick Portier, again, our photographer who was first here on the scene. Ironically, he had come to get some pictures of the early morning fog anyway. As a weather-related story, little did anyone know how it was about to affect what was to happen in the next few minutes. Interestingly, he talked to some people, Bob, who were traveling along the Bayway, saying that even though the visibility was almost zero, a lot of motorists were still traveling 55 to 60 miles an hour.
You know, and they always do.
They do, absolutely, and police say that just absolutely was a deadly combination today. People have got to slow down.
Plus, this probably came as a surprise to many people because in Mobile and on the Eastern Shore, it was a normal day. It was only when you got across on the Bayway did everything turn foggy and all the trouble began.
It's typical. A lot of times, even in the middle of the afternoon, you'll have a beautiful day and then this strange patch of fog that settles over the Bayway. Again, people have got to slow down. And when you realize what an incredible amount of roadway it encompassed, we're now told 2 miles in either direction, west and eastbound. So 4 miles combined. That's an incredible disaster.
You know, maybe we'll get some warning signs or warning lights that'll warn people at least to try to slow down, especially when things are foggy.
We'll have to hope so, yeah.
All right, thanks, Amy. Nancy, let's go back to you. Have more specifics on those who are injured.
Yes, Bob. So many cars and so many people involved in these accidents. It is staggering. Here's our latest information. 130 cars were involved in this morning's disaster. 1 person died. 6 are in critical condition. A total of 87 people were taken to area hospitals. 11 people have been admitted to the hospitals. The person killed in the accident has been identified as Frances Curry Cobus, a 50-year-old woman from Bay Minette. She apparently was in a car in the westbound lane. Again, that is a total of 87 people taken to area hospitals. Carol Hunter was the first reporter at USA Medical Center this morning, where 22 patients were treated. She has the latest information on how the injured are doing. Carol?
Well, Nancy, amazingly, most of the victims received only minor injuries and by now have been treated and released. About a quarter of the injured were brought right here. And as you can imagine, it made for a very busy morning. The USA Medical Center emergency room hasn't seen anything like this since the Amtrak disaster in September of 1993. Before the morning was over, 22 people would be wheeled through these doors, some sharing an ambulance with 1 or 2 other patients. By 9 o'clock, trauma rooms and hallways were filled, and the hospital put its mass casualty plan into action, treating a wide variety of injuries.
Most of our patients are what we call walking wounded. They were hurt but needed knee x-rays, arm x-rays, abrasions, lacerations, glass injuries, and things like that.
Mary Lewis's sister has been in the emergency room for 3 hours now. The waiting is taking its toll on Mary, even though she says her sister's injuries don't seem severe.
She had injuries to her face, arms, hands. But other than that, I thank God that she's still here with us. I had prayed and God, you know, please don't take my sister, and I thank God that she's here. She's still here with us. If she have a few injuries, they are men. The main thing is God gave her back to us, and I thank God for that.
Everyone agrees.
You know, when we had the train disaster, people either died or they had very minor injuries. With acceleration, deceleration injuries, and a lot of blunt trauma that we would have expected from high-speed cars in fog, I expected things to be a lot worse, and I was really glad when things didn't turn out as bad as we'd expected.
I talked with several of the paramedics who transported patients here throughout the morning, and they too expected things to be much worse than they were. They tell us every time they came across a mangled car, they expected to see a fatality, and they were amazed and surprised when every time except one, they didn't. Nancy?
Carol, you talked about a mass casualty plan. What does that involve?
Well, Nancy, it's called into action anytime the hospital expects more than 15 casualties, and it's a hospital-wide plan. Every hospital employee reports to his supervisor. All the available physicians and medical students report to the emergency room. A special triage area is set up to classify the injuries, and of course everyone stands by ready to treat and help any of the patients who come in.
All right, thank you. Carol Hunter reporting live from USA Medical Center. We have a breakdown on the hospitals involved. 3 people were admitted to USA Medical Center. 19 were treated and released. 14 victims were taken to Providence Hospital. Of those, 1 is in surgery, 1 has been admitted, and 12 have been released. 12 people were taken to Spring Hill Memorial Hospital. All were treated and released. 11 victims went to Thomas Hospital in Fairhope. They are in the emergency room. 8 have been treated and released. 2 people are still being examined at USA Knollwood Hospital. 8 others were treated and released, and 4 people were taken to Mobile Infirmary. 2 of them were admitted, the other 2 treated and released. State Trooper's office has confirmed 14 others were taken to the hospital, but hospital officials have not released their conditions. Now, if you are still trying to find family members or friends involved in this morning's pileup, there is a number you can call for information. Those involved in the accident who did not have serious injuries were taken to the Mobile Convention Center for first aid. That number there is area code 334-460-8000. Someone from the Emergency Management Agency should be manning the phones to help those of you still looking for people who may have been involved in the accident. That number again is 334-460-8000. Bob?
Okay, now the accidents, of course, were cleared and everybody was treated, and they had to clear out the mess here, and it was an awful mess. Take a look at what wreckers had to do and flatbed trucks and everything else. It was just an enormous job, as you can imagine, with more than 100 cars piled up, trucks turned on their sides, some leaning over the side of the Bayway, almost falling into the bay. All of these had to be cleaned up because, of course, they wanted to get traffic moving as well. Cars that couldn't be taken out of the area were lined up on the causeway where they could be kept until they could be moved later. Well, in case you're just joining us now, just to recap, there was a terrible accident on the I-10 Bayway early this morning. Here you see some pictures of it that we had. A scene of a horrible chain reaction accident involved 130 cars and trucks. 1 person died in this, 87 were injured. All happened about 6:30 this morning as thousands of you were heading to work or to school. 2 miles of the eastbound lanes of the Bayway were closed. 2 miles of the westbound lanes also were closed because of accidents like this. There was thick fog in the area. That's a contributing factor, and you can be sure there are going to be calls for things like warning signs, perhaps blinking lights, warning drivers about the thick fog in the area, and also perhaps a warning to folks to please slow down. The speed limit on part of the Bayway is 65 miles an hour, and very often people go much faster than that. We don't know how fast they were going this morning, but the fog definitely was a contributing factor to this. We'll be back with more on this a little bit later.
Our top story from today, this morning's massive pileup on the Bayway, and Bob Griff is on the causeway with the recap. Bob?
All right, thanks a lot, Nancy. As you can see right now, traffic is flowing smoothly along the Bayway, both the east and the westbound lanes, but it sure wasn't that way this morning about 6:30 when fog covered the entire Bayway and more than 130 cars were involved in this massive pileup. You can really see it very well from the air. It was just an awful mess. Traffic was backed up for 2 miles in the eastbound lanes and the westbound lanes. 1 person died in all of this. 87 were injured. It was just a horrible mess. Police had their hands full. Cars just slammed into one another. They couldn't see. They tried to stop, but it was just boom, 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 one after another. It was an awful chain reaction wreck, and clearing the mess took all afternoon, and both the east and westbound lanes managed to open up this afternoon, and now traffic is moving smoothly. Nancy?
All right, that's us for here on That's it for us here on Action News 10 to 5 p.m. Coming up next, the NBC Nightly News.
And Dia Foster and I will be back for Action News 10 at 6 p.m. I'll see you then.